What is going on, everyone? Welcome back to another video. Now, this video is gonna be a little different. I actually build custom rods. You'll hear in a lot of my videos that the rod I'm building is a custom rod, so I can't really give you a name other than kind of what the parts that I used to put it together. But I thought it'd be fun to why not make a video about making some customized rods. So I had a cousin reach out to me. I'll actually link our video. It's actually my cousin Tyler that we took his dog out offshore. He liked my custom rods that I was using with the green camo handles. It's their 20 to 40 pound class. So he ended up buying two through me or ordering two through me. And so what we have now, I'll show you what we have so far. Just gray fish scale, pack bay, double ring lock, fish scale again. That's taped off to be in my dryer. But what we're gonna do, so part of custom rods is you kind of get requests on what to decorate the rod with and what they want the rod to look like. So with this one, Tyler, he just said it doesn't need to be fancy. So what I like to do, and it's a fun thing to do, is marbling. Now there are 1,000 different ways to marble. Some guys, they drag their toothpicks through there and do all kinds of swirls and stuff. I like to actually go for the almost like blood splatter kind of look and more traditional like marble look if I can make it. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna grab a couple pigments. I think we're gonna go with a gray, a white, a metallic blue, and then a regular blue. We're gonna pour these pigments, and what we're gonna do is we're actually gonna do a section of marbling right here. And this is just gonna be my way to do it. But what I'll do is I will get all this stuff poured up and show y'all how we do it. And we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna put some marbling on both of these rods right here, because they're gonna be matching rods by the end of it. And that's gonna be the beautiful thing is marbling. It's a very easy way to make two very customized decorative kind of themes on these rods. And I'm gonna use the same pigments of marbling powder and everything, but no matter how hard I try, they won't be 100% the same thing. They're going to be two unique but similar custom rods. They're going to match. They're going to go great on his boat. So without further ado, we'll get into pouring some epoxy, and we'll get some marble pigment on these bad boys. So what we're doing here, we're actually getting this 2-part flex coat high build formula rod wrapping finish. We're going to mix this 1-to-1, and I believe we're going to do 3 cc's here. It's important that you get these to as close to 1-to-1 as you can. Now what we're doing, we're just gonna apply a thin coat of epoxy first, just because that marbling pigment epoxy that we're gonna use later, we're gonna have to set that in this epoxy so it can kind of roam and we can drag it directions with our toothpick or whatever tool we're gonna use. Here we're actually starting where I made an epoxy ramp using some rod blue epoxy. That I just taped it off on the fish scale, and we're going to start on that just so it gets that real epoxy gloss finish, just like the rest of our decorative wrap that we're doing right here. Here we're hitting it with a heat gun. What the heat is going to do is just going to get the air bubbles out. What I like to do is I like to hit it with heat before and after I apply the pigment epoxy, just to get air bubbles out in case I created some while dragging my toothpick through it. Now we are pouring some clear epoxy in, and then we are going to add this pigment. I actually had some malfunctions here with my blue pigment. Some humidity must have gotten in the bottle, so we're only going to stick with the metallic blue, gray, and I believe a pearl white. Now we are just applying the pigmented epoxies to that area that we applied the clear epoxy right above the handle. Now with this, there's 100 ways to do it. There's no real science. I like to kind of just put blobs on there, and then as you'll see later on, we'll drag our toothpick through. I'm really kind of just blurring my eyes and looking at this and looking for empty spaces, looking for where kind of one area lacks a certain color.
You can do it 300,000 different ways. I know people that will drag those toothpicks through there and make kind of swirls. I kind of like this where there's that empty space in between and you can really get more of a depth, in my opinion, if you leave some of that black blank behind all your pigment. Here we're going to grab a toothpick, and with the toothpick I'm just going to drag this colored epoxy just every different direction. I'm trying to leave some depth and leave some of that black blank behind it visible, but as you can see there's no real pattern to what I'm doing. I try and make all these colors kind of come together a little bit and intermingle with the brush of the toothpick.
Alright, so we're back in the garage. I'll show you where we're at on these rods. So what I haven't shown you is we applied the sticker decal. It's a metallic decal. And then we've also added about 4 layers probably of epoxy. We did 1 on top of the marbling, and then we've also done like 2 or 3 on top of the epoxy. So I'll show you what we're dealing with now here. This is the rod. So from start, fish scale, hack bay, fishtail. So this is what our epoxy looks like right here. Whiskey Throttle is the name of his boat. But as you can see with that glare, I don't know how well you can see that. With that glare, the epoxy is a little uneven. So the epoxy is uneven for 2 reasons. Anytime I put these decals on, I cannot get it clean enough, so it pits, which just means it's kind of an uneven level on your epoxy, even though it's self-leveling, and that's just due to whatever contaminants are on it and probably the smudge from my fingertips. But what we're going to do now is we're actually going to smooth this out, and what I do, and I'll video it, is I take actually a belt sander. Now I'm going to tape it off, but whenever I belt sand, I'm also very cautious when I'm doing it, just because if I go too deep, I'll actually sand kind of some of the stuff I have on the rod. Like for instance, I could potentially sand that off. That's just rod length, pound line, and then it's heavy with a moderate fast tip, and then just my initials on the build. And then I also want to be careful because I don't want to sand that off. Alright, so have the rod taped off, and I don't know how well you can tell, but all this sanding is going to do, I believe it's like a 4-inch hand sander, and then with that 4-inch hand sander, when I lay it down, what we'll be able to do is we'll be able to sand off any ridges in this uneven epoxy. And the plan here is what I do is, I believe it's like 120 grit. I'll sand with this 120, take down some of these ridges, go back over it with something a lot less grit. I believe I have like an assortment of like 250 to 400, and I'll hit that real quick just to smooth it out, make sure we didn't take any of the decals off, and then I'll do my final layer of epoxy, hit it with the heat, get the air bubbles out, and it should be good. Ooh, I'll show you.
So when I'm using this hand sander, if you watch my left hand, I'm slowly rotating that rod. What this is doing is I'm knocking down all those ridges, and you can see where there's no sanding marks, and that just means it's kind of a low spot where it's a valley in the epoxy. And I'm trying to get as much as the rod, kind of like that white, as you can see. That just means I sanded it down. And if I'm getting a lot of that, that means that I'm leveling that rod out.
So, and then too, so to get some instant feedback right here, you can see the unsanded portions. Those just means that that's like a valley where that epoxy is less, and anywhere you see that, which is a lot, that just means that's the high side of it. So as you can see, we took off a lot on this one right here, but I think we're actually going to call this good, and we'll just hit it with the finer grit. So we're back with the 400, and this is a lot easier. I'm just taking it real quick, not doing too much with it, just to kind of smooth some of any of the major kind of gouges or places where I took off maybe a little bit too much. This is just to sand those out. Nice and smooth. Ooh. And I will say this, this looks super rough, but the epoxy you apply on it, this is gonna be like glass. Hopefully, but should turn into like glass, and it's dull now, but it'll really make that marbling pop once we do an extra layer of epoxy here. Final layer of epoxy, hopefully. Got it on the variable speed right here, got it cranked up, got the epoxy already poured 1:1. Try and get y'all a good angle for this. Sorry if you see my gut. Start it down here. Ain't a bad angle. You'll see how this epoxy is going to clean right up with this application of epoxy. Oh no. Can't be having this. Not right now. Not in the middle. Work it all the way at the ramp. Down, super thin coat. See how we're getting all that color back. All right, slow it down. We gotta work fast, but oh yeah. All right, so what is going on? It's the next day. These rods are dry. We put that final coat of epoxy, and then we actually put another coat of epoxy just because we put it on thin enough to where you could kind of see some of the brush strokes in it. Need to get better brushes eventually, but I'm good with like my craft store cheap ones for right now. But go ahead and show you what we got. Very pleased with these, very pleased with it. So working from the grip here down, we got the heat shrink, fish scale. This was actually an epoxy ramp using some epoxy glue that I made the ramp, taped it off real good, and then we applied the epoxy over. And here we go, focus. Damn, I can't really see it. Okay, so it says Kardiac custom rods, handcrafted for whiskey throttle. Name of the boat, handwritten decals. We'll see that marbling we got going on here. And that's just one of them. It's a set of two. So the other one, like I said, looks very similar, but it's not going to be exactly the same. that's gonna be it. Let me know if y'all like this kind of stuff. I build a lot of rods, so say a lot, but I always have some on my workbench to build. If you like this video, let me know if you'd be interested in the wrapping of the rod guides, because right now it is a completely blank rod. All I'm gonna do though, it's not gonna be anything fancy, so might not be enjoyable. We're gonna go with all black. We're just gonna black it out from here on out, just because he doesn't want it to be fancy. And rods, honestly, the less kind of decoration and kind of cluster you have on there, the better they look in my opinion. But anyways, thanks for watching, and I'll get back to y'all with some more fishing videos and rod building videos in the future.